Welcome to Crunching Data, where we go behind the scenes with the data leaders who keep it all flowing. We're talking real stories, real challenges, and the future of data from the people building it. This is Crunching Data, a podcast brought to you by Matia, the unified data ops platform. Let's get into today's episode.
Hey everyone, this is Benjamin Segal, co-founder and CEO of Matia, the unified data operation platform. I'm here today with Ryan Delgado, who leads the data platform teams at Ramp. Ryan, it's really great to have you here on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to go into this to kick things off. Can you talk a bit about your background and how you found your way into data? I'm not sure it's the most traditional way, so would love to hear more about your way into data.
Yeah, so my background and how I moved into the data space. So maybe I could start with where I am now, and I could start with where I started and then kind of work our way inward. So I'm currently on the engineering team here at Ramp, and I lead the data platform team. And we're a team focused on building infrastructure and tools to enable Ramp to realize business value from data. Several different surface areas like offline analytics, that's your Airflow and Snowflake, online analytics, so that's ClickHouse, Kafka, similar technologies, our machine learning platform, so model training, model serving, things like that. And then also related to the machine learning platform is our feature platform for inputs into machine learning models. I love data. And I've been working with data and doing data engineering thingies since I was an undergrad in college. I actually started with just working on a research project with professors in the Econ department and then the finance department. At undergrad, I went to UNC Chapel Hill for undergrad, and I was mainly focused on writing MATLAB scripts that would pull data from different data sources and create some visualizations on economic data, or maybe we would run a back test on some systematic investment strategy. And I loved doing that. I loved working with data. I liked writing code. I was not a computer science major. I was just an econ major. So I had some of the business sense that I still use today, but I didn't have the formal training in algorithms and data structures that a lot of my colleagues have. And I've worked at a few companies in my career. My first job was it was not in a data role. It was actually what's called a technical analyst at a large bank. You can kind of think of that as kind of a project manager. And then also a document writer. And I worked on a few teams there. I worked on the last team I worked on there was the market risk IT team, where we're doing some data engineering. We're using SAS to write ETL pipelines to derive risk metrics for risk managers at the bank. And so I got a chance to do some of the programming. I could at least put it on my resume for when I got my next job at Citadel. So Citadel is a large multi-strategy hedge fund, and I worked as a data engineer with their fundamental equities business and rose through the ranks into head of data engineering for global equities. I was their flagship equities business, and we were building data pipelines and full stack data products that enable investment professionals to make better decisions on their investment portfolio. And we're working with traditional data sets, but also alternative data sets that they're not traditionally associated with finance. They're typically a lot larger, have a lot more data quality issues that we need to account for in the data pipeline. So some really interesting problems, learned a lot about working with data, learned a lot about working with people. And so when I transitioned from Citadel to Ramp, I had an idea on how could we unlock business value from data, but I also started to have opinions on, what does a good platform look like? And that left me really well positioned to, build a platform and lead our platform team at Ramp. And so that's where I am today. I've been here for 3.5 years now. I love it.
Super, super awesome path. Maybe for everyone that is living under the rock, I know you mentioned Ramp multiple times. I'm not sure everyone is familiar with Citadel, but if you can share a bit, what Ramp is doing as a company. We are a Ramp user and love it, but would love if you can share a bit about what Ramp is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could think of Ramp as the financial operating system of a company. So kind of a general description. What that means is that there are different common recurring functions that a finance team does that we've built software for to automate and streamline certain aspects of, and to enable new capabilities on tracking their spend so that they can hopefully save some more money. So let me be a little bit more specific. Our primary product is our card product and expense management solution. So I'm sure a lot of the listeners have corporate cards and expense management solution. We do away with expense reports, and we still link receipts to cards, but the process of linking that receipt to the card and adding a memo, it's more streamlined. Actually, a large percentage of that receipt matching process, it's done automatically for the user with, like, let's say a direct integration with Uber or with their email inbox or other integrations. We also automatically generate the memo. And so for the card holder, it's a really excellent experience. I love using ramp card. I mean, I'm biased, but I love using ramp cards. But our primary champion at a company is going to be the back office finance team. And so we'll do things like integrate with their ERP or automate a lot of the tedium associated with that work. And we have other product lines for accounts payables. Our bill pay product is also a pretty broadly used product. And then also we're expanding into other areas like travel, expense management, and also the entire procure to pay lifecycle. So it's a great space to be in, and we're excited.
I would say as a co-founder CEO, not the back office. Maybe I did a bit of the back office at the beginning, but I'm your champion here for Ramp. We are users and we love using it because it's truly saving time. I feel like it saved quite a lot of time for me as closing the books, etc. What people don't know, or many people don't know, that Ramp is kind of like one of the fastest growing companies, which I guess come with a lot of unique sets of challenges. I know a lot of people internally and externally are relying on your data team. Can you talk a bit some challenges in the past 6 months?
So let's see. Biggest challenges we faced within the last 6 months. Talk about what we're doing with classical machine learning. So not quite AI yet, but XGBoost type models. We have a platform for training these types of models, running batch inference, or maybe serving inference results of these models in a REST service. It's a really hard, really interesting problem. And we spent a lot of time over the last 5-6 months hardening and scaling that platform to improve the development experience of our applied scientists and also our applied AI engineers, while also improving the reliability of the online services. So we've put a lot of focus into that, but also with partnering with the applied science and applied AI teams and other stakeholders on their applications. That's an area we're putting a lot of focus. A recent problem that we're starting to tackle is scaling our reporting product. A large part of the reason why Ramp customers use Ramp is that they don't just want to save time, but they also want to save money, and they want more visibility on their spending and other aspects of their business. And so we have a reporting product that provides out-of-the-box reports on, let's say, spending by department or other pivots in the company. We're interested in scaling that out to other verticals in our product: accounts payables, travel, our workflows, functionality. And so my team is deeply involved in that area. And we're also interested in building out a product for defining and tracking against budgets within the Ramp applications. That's been an exciting area we've focused on. So really difficult, really interesting problems. A lot of back-end software engineering, but it's based on ClickHouse. So there's a lot of interesting data problems as well.
You mentioned ClickHouse. Going into your tech stack, and now looking at the modern data stack, like in 2025, guess there are a lot of tools out there. I know you mentioned ClickHouse, Snowflake. In the past, I remember also Databricks, but I hope I'm not saying things wrong. Having all those tools, I guess every tool have different use case. I'm wondering what would be like tools that you would recommend people to use today.
Definitely, yeah. So what would I recommend in terms of tools that people would use today? So what I could say is that your mileage may vary, and different tools will work for different companies because they'll have different problems. For us, we're a B2B SaaS company, and velocity is in our blood. So there is an ever-growing desire to ship. What that means for platform teams is that we need to put a lot of emphasis on defining an excellent developer experience, but also enabling new developers to onboard very easily. So for, let's say, our offline analytics platform, Snowflake, business intelligence, things like that. We use standard tools. I'm a huge fan of Snowflake. I find it's very easy to use, very easy to scale. I used it at my last company too. And a lot of the folks that are on the analytics engineering team at Ramp, they're also Snowflake users. So I think that's at the core of our platform, and really it's our bedrock. Paired with that, we use an orchestrator. We're an Airflow shop, and again, I use that at my last firm. I know it extremely well. There's some newer orchestrators that are interesting, but we're definitely an Airflow shop. And then along with the modern data stack, we use DBT. We orchestrate DBT with Airflow, and we'll run our DBT builds on Snowflake. DBT, it's a ELT pipelining framework. So in order to facilitate ELT, we need to sync data from external sources into our Snowflake database. And we're big users of Matia, obviously, for ETL tools. And so we'll use Matia to integrate data from third-party data sources, as well as our internal Postgres databases, into Snowflake to facilitate these ELT pipelines. So that's a view of our offline analytics stack. We also have a BI tool. We use Looker currently, and then another great product for analytics is Hex. So we're big users of Hex. So.
It's amazing. There is a lot of noise. I know you and your team are kind of like, in general, I see it in Ramp a lot. People try to use new tools. How do you evaluate in general, what's noise and what's not?
Definitely. So how do we evaluate vendor tools? It seems like we're asking, it's not necessarily our evaluation process, but in terms of the vendor landscape, how do we pick and choose which vendors to explore?
Yeah, more from an exploration space, right? Because a lot of things are kind of like the new AI tool that can save you X amount of time. And I know Ramp, as a company in general, is a big believer of speed. So
Yeah.
you're checking tools, but at the same time, you have to have the tools, very reliable tools, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the core of it starts with a problem that we have. Let's say we have a capability that we want to do, but we currently can't do it. Or maybe there's a technical gap. So a year and a half ago, there were routes in our back end that they're very slow. And we wanted to speed them up. And so we tried our best to add indices to our Postgres database, but you can only get so far. And so that's when we started to explore uh, uh, OLAP databases like Pinot, and we eventually landed on ClickHouse. And we landed on ClickHouse in the same way that we landed on, let's say, Matia. We have a network of VCs and then also just industry experts on these tools that we can lean on and say, hey, so-and-so, we have this type of problem. They say, oh, well, you should take a look at ClickHouse to solve that. And a lot of the VCs that have invested in Ramp, they also invest in other technology companies that likely solve our problem. So I think a really strong network and just word of mouth from our investors, and then also just the experts that we lean on, that's really helpful for helping us make the decision which vendors to try out. We also do prefer we do give preference to existing Ramp customers. So if you're looking to do business with Ramp, you should do business as a customer.
I think when I talked with you in the past, you were talking about, when you joined Ramp at the time, there was a lot of kind of like step function and changes that you made in order to build a more robust platform. My question to you here is, what's the right time for an early stage company? Could be 50, 100, 150 people to start and kind of like build and invest into formal data platform team.
So when is the right time to invest in a platform and a broader platform team? And for that, I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, against my best interest, you should do that at the last possible moment before you need it. The reason being is that we want to guard against over optimizing too soon. And a mistake that I've certainly made is thinking about the platform before the problems, first of all, and second of all, proposing a tool that solves the problem, but it oversolves it. It's actually too complex. And maybe you're introducing Airflow too soon when a cron job would have sufficed. So the rule that I follow is that always use either the most naive approach that you can think of to solve a problem, and it just barely solves the problem, or leverage existing technologies already in your stack. So if you have a data problem, even if it's, let's say, an analytics problem, you already have a Postgres database, see how far you can get with Postgres before you look at Snowflake. Orchestration, like I said, I think using cron jobs and getting as far as you can with that before looking at a proper orchestrator, I think that's absolutely worth doing, because the most important thing is not the platform and the long-term scalability for a startup. The most important thing for a startup is just getting to the next round. So because you're thinking more near term than long term, does it really make sense to invest in, let's say, a 6-person platform team and that will build a platform that will last you for years?
Talking a bit into AI, I know you are big believers in ramp of testing. How do you see AI showing up in your day-to-day workflow?
So how do I see AI showing up in my day-to-day workflow in general? I think AI usage within Ramp is reflexive. If I need to ask a question, I'm rarely running the query on Google. I type Command Shift P, ask the question of Perplexity, or I bop in the Notion Command J and I ask Notion AI if it's an internal question. Routine information retrieval, it's all done through AI and LLMs. Well, most of it through AI and LLMs. As a software engineer, LLMs are a critical part of my workflow. So I'm a big user of Claude Code. Nowadays, I don't write a whole lot of code. A lot of my day-to-day is management. But when I do write codes, 95% of it is written by an LLM. For more often than not, I'm writing a prompt for Claude Code on what the problem is, how to evaluate the problem, and other details it may need in order to solve that problem. I'm a high specificity prompter. At least for now, the models are getting better and better every 2 weeks, it seems like. So I think over time, I'll need to specify less. But my workflow, it's not unique. We have about, I think, like 300 engineers at Ramp, and the vast majority of them are using LLMs to generate, if I had to estimate, at least half the code on a daily basis. We're one of the biggest users of Cursor in the country. A lot of folks use Claude Code. We're also trialing different LLM IDE integrations. We like to try new things. We also have a small team that's dedicated to just DevX with AI. So these are two incredibly talented engineers that their main objective is to experiment with the existing AI tools out there for developing code, and then also develop internal proprietary tools that accelerate our development. So maybe they'll build plugins for Claude Code. Maybe they'll integrate Claude Code with Gemini in some way to combine the strengths of those two. They're really creative in what they do. So it's really exciting.
It's pretty unique and interesting to see how much is invested within ramp in general in experimentation. I guess it was before the AI and also within the AI space, but just constantly experimenting things. I see it a lot as a user in the platform where new things come in, and most likely they are being experimented on me on an A/B testing or some way like that. But you see a lot of changes, and it's pretty cool to see how much you're experimenting. Did you do any AI implementation within the data team, like things that are serving? I don't know if you're serving LLM models or stuff like that within the data team, or any infrastructure that actually serve that for the company.
So we own some of the infrastructure that power LLM applications within Ramp. Are we the tip of the spear in applying LLMs? There are a lot of engineering teams within Ramps that are applying LLMs to their use cases. We do have one team, the Applied AI team, that's their main mandate, hence the name. But there are other engineers on different teams that apply LLMs to the problem. So maybe I could talk about a few examples. So my favorite example is our outbound automation platform, literally our spamming infrastructure. So if you're listening to Ramp, you might have listened to this podcast, you might have received an email from Ramp saying, hey, how about you become a Ramp customer? Maybe it's actually a highly personalized email that includes information that you might find in your LinkedIn profile. And so our growth platform team, they built a process to ingest data on leads from different data sources. So we built out a TAM data set, and then also several enrichment processes to retrieve information about the people that work at a particular company, and maybe details that we could use on what problems are they trying to solve in their finance teams, or maybe just details about them that would enable us to craft a more personalized message to them. And so we'll use that information, we'll pass it into the context of an LLM, and that's what we send in an email. It's very effective. A lukewarm email, it's a lot more effective in converting prospects to leads than just a cold email. We also own the vector database. We actually use ClickHouse as a vector database. It's a surprisingly effective vector database. And so we'll power applications like, let's say, our receipt matching algorithm, where a receipt comes in, we'll create an embedding of that receipt, and then we'll compare that embedding using a similarity search to unmatched transaction embeddings. And then we'll use an LLM to re-rank, let's say, the top K candidates that this receipt could match to a transaction. We have other applications within RAMP that have a similar flow. So our merchant matching algorithm also uses embeddings and then other algorithms in order to ultimately resolve this merchant to a canonical merchant within our RAMP data set. So I think all in all, we have somewhere between 50 and 60 features in production where we apply LLMs to solve that problem. So that's just so far. We're working with LLMs every single day.
That's super, super interesting. Switching gears into some leadership stuff. I know we talked a bit about AI, but you've been in leadership role for quite a bit of time and managing quite a bit of people. And I guess you learned a lot of things, some the hard way, some the easy way. Can you share something around, one hiring lesson you have learned the hard way through your experience in the past few years?
One hiring lesson that I've learned the hard way. So let's see. Maybe I could talk more about the process that we use at Ramp in order to choose candidates. And our goal, of course, is to choose a candidate that will best solve the problem in front of them. Really capable engineers. We're not necessarily looking for a well-rounded engineer, though. We're looking for an engineer with spikes. And so maybe they know a technology or they're knowledgeable about some technical pattern that we really need help with. That's how I joined Ramp. I knew data engineering. They were looking to build a kind of a small data platform, and I wanted to do that. That's how I joined Ramp. Generally, in our interview process, we have a technical bar that we have candidates meet, and also there's a behavioral bar. The way that we evaluate the technical bar is with coding interviews and system design interviews. The behavioral bar, we don't include the people team in those interviews, which might be different than how other companies do it. We actually have a cross-functional stakeholder. Maybe it's a product manager, or maybe it's actually another engineer on another team. I interview them. It's just a vibe check. How do you collaborate? And then also, I also ask behavioral type questions when I do a hiring manager interview. So I think that's been pretty effective. I think in times when maybe hiring wasn't effective, there were qualities that we should have looked for that we didn't. I think one thing is just hustle. Ramp is still very much a startup, and we function as a startup, so velocity is very important. And I think kind of a hunger to iterate rapidly into ship a barely working prototype into production as quickly as possible, and then start iterating, and that get through that flywheel of iteration. That's something that we emphasize a lot, and look out for. I think the other thing is just slope. We try to hire for potential. Where could they be in, let's say, 1 or 2 or 3 years down the line, rather than where are they currently? And if they have high slope, they're high propensity to grow, that's someone I want to bet on long term. That's someone I want to hire, rather than someone that has a track record but is otherwise not really growing and progressing.
Super, super interesting. It sounds a bit different than other companies I'm talking with, which is I find very unique in Ramp. Means you come in and you can really grow if you hustle and you have the spikes as you define. What makes a great data team in your perspective, like in your eyes? You have, I think, pretty good team, or like a phenomenal team in my perspective, actually. But I'm not objective, so wondering how do you look, or what's your goal of like building a great data team?
What's the goal of building a great data team, and what do I look for? Let's say a great data team. So I think for my area, I lead a data platform team, and I think the key to building a great data platform team and also a great data platform is to emphasize the problems rather than the platforms. I think a mistake that I made actually early on at Ramp is I put too much emphasis on the platforms and building that first before thinking about the problems. And what happened is that I built platforms that were difficult to use or they weren't useful. And I pivoted to thinking more about the problems rather than the platforms. I want to partner closely with stakeholders on solving the problems with, let's say, a novel pattern rather than building a platform and letting a platform evolve naturally out of that. Maybe we add rigor to how we use that pattern. We modularize certain code, we add observability, and a platform arises naturally. I find we're a lot more successful there. So I guess more generally, I think what separates a good data team from a great data team is closeness to the problems and the stakeholders and the partnership that you use in order to arrive at a solution for those problems.
That's super interesting. Is there anything specific you do in order to build or keep the relationship with other departments? Because you're saying you need to be as close as possible to them and understand the problems with them together. Because there is also
Yeah.
the human element.
I mean, I think it starts with an attitude. I mean, the output of my team, it's not just my team, but it's also the teams in my immediate vicinity. So it's a data platform team. My biggest stakeholder is, of course, is going to be the data team, the analytics engineering team, the applied science team. So I'm focused on making those teams as much as possible, and I make it clear to the leads of those teams that I am only successful if they're successful. And so that shows up in the first introduction whenever I, let's say, embed an engineer on a particular business vertical. But also, you have to show up on a day-to-day basis. So we have a help desk on our team. It's a Slack channel, and it's our responsibility to respond to questions. And whenever I'm on call, I respond to questions eagerly and with a partnership attitude, and try to solve the problem promptly. And everyone on my team also has that same vigor in partnering with folks and helping out.
That's amazing. Attitude is a key. What's your most controversial data opinion? Moving to more light. I don't know if it's a light question, but more light question in my view than the leadership.
What is my most controversial opinion? So I think there are two areas that are most ripe for disruption over the next 5 years. First of all is the BI tool. I think LLMs and the possibility of text to SQL, it changes the game in terms of how to serve information to non-technical stakeholders. I mean, with the Claude desktop app, if I have a CSV file I want to analyze locally, I can just type my questions in natural language and it can automatically generate reports for me that answer the question. In other words, visualize the data. It's very powerful. So it'll be interesting to see how this affects the incumbents within business intelligence, Looker, et cetera. Can they adapt to the LLM landscape? Can they integrate, or is something else going to happen? My other hot take is, I think the other area ripe for disruption is the data warehouse. So I'm a huge fan of Iceberg, and I think that's going to unlock different capabilities for a data platform. And I think the incumbents in the space, for instance, Databricks, Snowflake, I think the reason why they're rushing to acquire, let's say, Tabular, for instance, is because they recognize it too, that if they don't ride the open table format wave, they could become irrelevant. One idea that I have, or that someone is probably already working on, is what if, first of all, the DuckDB integration with Iceberg was more mature? You had a clean interface to query Iceberg tables, but also DuckDB could write to Iceberg. Maybe you could run update or insert statements on Iceberg tables. Or maybe a lot of the data warehouse primitives, truncate, things like that. If you could do that, and if you could build ACLs on top of these Iceberg tables, you basically have a working data warehouse, but the compute doesn't live, let's say, in the cloud. It lives on my local workstation. That opens up an opportunity for startups to use the data warehouse very quickly, but also very cheaply. So, for consumers like me, that's interesting. It's very appealing. But for incumbents, that might be concerning.
I cannot agree more on open table formats other than compactions, but that will be solved, I guess, with writing better. Last question on my end, a fun one, I guess. If you were not doing anything data related, what would be your dream job?
If I was not doing anything data related, I would be a musician. I was an econ major in school, but I was also a guitar performance major, and I'm a classically trained guitarist. My COVID hobby was actually flamenco guitar. I took online flamenco guitar lessons over Skype back when that was a thing, and I love that. That's my other life passion. So I think I would be doing that. I always have a lot of fun when I play guitar. Yeah.
That's amazing, Ryan. Thank you for the time. Thank you for joining us. Cannot wait to see you again in person soon. Appreciate your time.
Likewise, Ben. It was a blast.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Crunching Data, brought to you by Matia, the unified data ops platform. You can find us at matia.io.